this idea, kind of came from some conversations between me and Jackie around what sort of events can we do. We were actually talking about doing an in-person Chinatown tour, either in Manhattan or Flushing, pre-pandemic. We've sort of just gave up on waiting for that. So we decided to do it virtually here. But it sort of goes along with some recurring events that we've done with our club. One of my favorite things to do with the club, and I've been involved for the last, maybe 8 or 9 years up here in New York, is these tours where we get a group of, I think 10 to 15 alumni and walk around and learn a little bit about, a certain area of New York, and go into some pubs or, catch some food and stuff. So, and we've done downtown or financial districts, the West Village, Gramercy Park, and now Chinatown, and hope to continue and do more in the future. So Jackie, I'll turn it over to you for a second. Do you want to hop in and tell everybody your background?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. So my name's Jackie Chan. I'm a class of 2018 graduate. I major in economics and minor in public service while I was an undergrad at Hampden-Sydney. My family's originally from China, and I immigrated to the States when I was around 8, 9. I spent most of my time in my early childhood in a little town in Southwest Virginia called Pulaski, Virginia. Not sure if anyone actually knows where that's at, but it's about 20-30 minutes south of Blacksburg. So that's where I spend most of my days. And after graduation, I moved up to New York City, where my family had moved to while I was in undergrad, and started building my career here. And that's why I really met Matt, and I started engaging with the local alumni chapter here.
Jackie, do you have a Qingdao?
I don't, unfortunately. Couldn't get one.
All right. Well, to everybody that's on, cheers. I've got my Qingdao, which is one of the bigger Chinese breweries. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. I didn't want to do that while we were talking here. I didn't know if you'd still be able to see me or not. So here we go. I should be able to see everything on my end.
Yep, you're good to go, Matt.
Great. So just to start off, we wanted to give you a little bit of background here on Chinatown, Chinese immigration, what the Chinese New Year is. Jackie is going to be a little more qualified than I am to do that, but we scheduled this to coincide with the Chinese New Year, which is going to occur tomorrow. So 2021 is the year of the ox. The Chinese New Year is based around the Chinese zodiac, which has 12 different years and 12 different animals. But I'll let Jackie hop on and discuss a little bit more just what the meaning of the Lunar New Year is. And maybe he could give us a little bit of background on just how the Chinese and how maybe he and his family actually celebrate that holiday.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. I think that gave us a really good foundation for me to build off of. So the Chinese New Year, or more commonly recognized as like the Lunar New Year since it is celebrated across different Asian countries, really is the biggest holiday in China and many countries that have a significant Chinese descent. So in practice, it's very much serves the same purpose as our Thanksgiving, where the entire family travels from far and wide back to their hometown and really have and have a nice, fulfilling dinner with their family. It's less so similar to Western New Year's in that you're celebrating the oncoming of a new year, but it's more a time for a family to kind of gather and decompress and leave all the stress of your hustle and bustle at work away and just kind of enjoy family time. And to build off what Matt mentions about the 12 zodiac and the 12 animals, we're going into the year of the ox, and the ox represents strength and hard working. So many of those individuals that's born in the year of the ox will have some of those characteristics. It's kind of like Western zodiac in a sense that if you're born in a certain year, it brings certain fortunes and luck associated with it and different personal attributes. So year of the ox, my mom's actually an ox, and I could very much say that she is a very hardworking woman, and very strong-headed as well. So it fits her well. So that's a little background around Chinese New Year's.
Thanks, Jackie. And one of the reasons that this is so important to New York is there's 2.5 million Chinese immigrants in the United States today, and we've got almost 500,000 of those in the New York area. I'm actually chatting with you from just south of Chinatown, so it's sort of right in my backyard. To start off, we're going to do a quick video here. I wanted to show everybody how to make I don't know if this is a drink that they're going to drink in China, but I wanted to introduce you to Baiju, which is a Chinese liquor, and something that maybe you could drink at home and try. So give me a sec to open this up, and someone let me know if this isn't playing properly, but I'll give it a try.
Hey everybody, so to kick off our show today, I want to introduce you quickly to Baiju and a cocktail that you can make with it at home. Baiju is a clear distilled spirit, not all that different from vodka or unaged rum or tequila. In China, they typically drink it neat at room temperature. I'd like to put it in a cocktail, so today we're going to make a little bit of a riff on a Moscow Mule. Instead of vodka, we're going to use Baiju. I didn't have any Baiju, so I went to Chinatown today, walked into a liquor store, had a chat with the clerk. He suggested this one. So it's from Sichuan province, $20 for a 375 milliliter bottle. This is one of 4 categories of Baiju, this one being the sweet aroma category. So a strong aroma category, sorry. So we're talking like banana, pineapple, and anise flavors. To make the drink, we are going to take my copper mug filled with ice. I have 1.5 ounces of the Baiju in my shot glass. Gonna put that in there. I've got 4 ounces of ginger beer to add to that, just about. If you want to change the ratios to suit your taste, go ahead. And I'm gonna throw in some Angostura bitters. What's a cocktail without bitters? And lastly, a squeeze of 1/4 of a lime, which I'm gonna drop in there and give a quick stir. And here we are. Cheers, Ganbei.
All right, hope everybody, Cameron, can we hear that okay?
Yeah, that was perfect.
All right, great.
And I'm pretty sure that's what Jackie's drinking out of that Yeti cup he's got in his hand. It's not.
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
I'm not gonna tell.
Jackie, have you ever had Baiju?
I have. I'm not a big fan of it because of how strong it is. It's lots of people call it firewater, and I 100% agree with that description.
Yeah, I mean this particular type of Baiju is 52% ABV. I mean, your typical vodka is going to be 40%. So it's strong, and it does have a very distinct flavor to it. I thought the drink I made was good, but they do say, and this is a picture of the bottle and the name if anybody wants to try it. But they say thick aroma, refreshing taste, and a lingering aftertaste, and it definitely has a lingering aftertaste. I felt like I could taste it for a good half hour after I finished my drink. So everybody should try some. It may not be your favorite thing you've ever had, but I think mixing it with ginger beer is probably a good way to go instead of just ripping shots of it. So anyway, quickly, and this isn't meant to really be a history lesson for anybody. I'm certainly not an expert on Chinese immigration or history, but one of the cool things about us doing this was I learned a lot about not just Chinatown, but Chinese immigration. If we start off in the 1820s is when it seemed like Chinese immigration to the West Coast really started in earnest. Obviously, the West Coast is closer to China than the East Coast. And it wasn't until much later that we started to see more immigrants from China to the United States, and then find them on the East Coast. A lot of them were initially laborers, and many of them helped build the Transcontinental Railroad. The Chinese Exclusion Act actually eliminated Chinese immigration, which didn't really start again until 1943 when it was repealed, and that was still very limited at that point. In 1952, things started to open up a little bit more. The United States started to allow non-Europeans to enter the country again, which kind of brings us to a really interesting part of our discussion here. In my research on Chinatown, I found out that John Leighton Stewart, the last ambassador to China from the United States before he was expelled and the communists took over, was a Hampden-Sydney graduate, class of 1896. He has a really interesting background. He was born in China, the son of an American missionary, and didn't move to Virginia until boarding school. Came to the Charlottesville area and went to a school called Pantops Academy. Was encouraged to go to Hampden-Sydney by a favorite teacher of his, and then ended up going to Union Theological Seminary, and eventually moving back to China to become not only the first president of Yenching University, which was a predecessor to Peking University, one of the best universities in China today, but he did become the U.S. ambassador, and his ashes were finally buried in China to his wishes in 2008. He actually wanted to be buried next to his wife in Beijing, but the communists wouldn't allow that to happen. And actually a chance meeting between President Xi Jinping and a former, the son of a former, I think, houseworker for Stewart, who had become an American military general, actually encouraged the Chinese to repatriate him. So it's really, really neat thing to figure out in my research. So I want to let Jackie sort of handle this. One thing that we did want to talk about was, China is a very large and diverse place, obviously, in terms of the number of languages they speak. And that also plays into just the immigration and where Chinese immigrants had come from over time. And, Jackie, I wanted you to chat with us about your personal background and, being originally from Hong Kong and whatnot, if you want to take it over.
Yeah, I'm happy to. So I think from the West, when we view China, we tend to see it as a very homogeneous country in terms of it's as a nation state, and the country itself is very much associated with the people and the Chinese ethnicity. I think that from the outside, although it may seem that China is a very homogeneous country, in fact, it's actually quite diverse. There's actually 56 recognized minority groups in China, out of which the Han Chinese makes up the largest population. I believe the Han is about 97%. What many Westerners don't realize is that there's actually different minorities and ethnicities in China. So you have the Uyghurs, which we hear a lot on the news nowadays. You have the Tibetan Chinese, you have the Mongolian Chinese, you have the Korean Chinese, also the Vietnamese Chinese. So even though that from the outside China may seem like a very homogeneous country, it's quite diverse. And across its 5,000 years of history, different areas in China have developed their own cultures and subcultures and languages and customs. I think the easiest way to kind of differentiate is that you have nowadays when you're looking from a Western perspective is that you have the mainland China, which is mostly Han Chinese dominated, speaks mostly Mandarin, and I think that's the China that the West sees nowadays. But historically, when we look back at how the Western world views China, I think Hong Kong and Canton in the southern region of China perhaps have more of a predominant effect on the Western exposure to China. So Hong Kong was originally a British territory that was colonized in the 1800s and was leased to the British for 100 years. I was actually born in Hong Kong, so I have a British passport and a Chinese passport on top of my US passport. But it's the first wave of migration of Chinese immigrants to the US and to Britain and to a lot of these Western countries are from Hong Kong and those surrounding regions. So you'll see that a lot of Americans now, I mean, Chinese Americans actually, their mother tongue might be Cantonese. And that generally kind of signifies that their family have migrated from China to the US earlier than a lot of the immigrants from mainland China, which is more of a recent phenomenon, I think, in the last 20 to 30 years.
Great, thanks, Jackie. I just wanted to show everybody this graph very quickly. You know, the two cities, wanted to highlight San Francisco and New York. There's actually more Chinese immigrants in the New York City area than there are in the Bay Area. But one of the interesting things there is New York is just so diverse that it actually makes up a smaller percentage of our metro population. You know, whereas on the West Coast, it's a higher percentage there. You know, everybody thinks of New York as a city of immigrants, I think, and I was actually surprised at how much of New York City was foreign born. The population of New York City is, you know, as of 2013, 8.4 million people, with 3.1 million being foreign born. So, you know, over a third, well over. And there's 200 languages spoken here. Just thought I wanted to highlight that quickly. And, you know, we're talking about this neighborhood of Chinatown. One thing that I've always thought is interesting, there's no real official list of what are New York City neighborhoods. You know, I live in the financial district, which real estate agents are rebranding FIDI because it sounds cooler, a little bit more like Tribeca, I guess. So Tribeca stands for Triangle Beneath Canal, in case that's news to anybody. And we've got a number of other distinct neighborhoods that sort of run together at the same time in Lower Manhattan, Chinatown being one of them. And so what is Chinatown? Well, if you look at this little map here, you can see how that actually overlaps with Little Italy and it's adjacent to Nolita. It was a term coined by the New York Times in 1880 to describe this small area of land bounded by Mott, Pell, and Doyer streets, and that's actually where we're going to take you in our video. The early eateries there, sort of as you would imagine, tea houses, rice shops, other shops where people who were Chinese would go to buy food and whatnot to eat there, to make it home. And interestingly, it also contains this area called Five Points. If you've seen Gangs of New York, you know, a famous movie about New York, it's historical fiction, I guess, but it is a real area, and it was a rough and tumble sort of place where there were gangs and you know, a lot of immigrants living at the time. So at this point, we'll give you a little bit more information after our video on some of the places that we went to, but we wanted to sort of get that rolling so everyone could enjoy the show with us. I think it's going to be about 10 minutes, so we hope you all enjoy, and hopefully this works here.
And Matt, before you get started, say if anybody has any questions about anything they're seeing in the video or anything that was discussed prior or throughout the night, please feel free to submit any questions for Matt or Jackie in the chat or the Q&A feature.
Great. I know I've been talking a lot. I had to get my words in because Jackie's going to handle a lot of this tour. So I hope you all enjoy.
spreading the news. I'm leaving today. I wanna be a part of it. New York, New York, these vagabond shoes.
Here we are on Doyer Street. We're in the heart of Chinatown. At our first stop here, Nam Wan Tea Parlor. Doyer Street, like a lot of New York, is named after a Dutch immigrant. Originally, he owned a lot of the property around here, and actually the U.S. Post Office, which is right around the corner over there, was the location of his distillery. So I'll let Jackie talk about the first restaurant we went into.
Yeah, so as Matt mentioned, this is a very historical street. It's one of the 3 original streets of Chinatown, that being Doyer, Pell, and Mott. And around the corner where we're actually about to eat here in a minute is one of the oldest Chinese restaurants in New York City, founded in the 1920s, so they just turned 100 years old. The core inside is very reminiscent of that time, tin ceilings, tile floors. And I think this is the 4th generation owner operator.
And unfortunately, as you can see, they don't have any dining structures, and it's 30 degrees out today, so we're gonna probably be pretty cold while we're eating.
We're ordering very traditional Chinese dim sum, which literally translate into like a touch of heart, because every single dish is handmade, and it takes years and years for these chefs to perfect making these dishes. It's a very Cantonese dish, so if you know Chinese geography, we're talking about the southern region of China. One of the most famous cities in that region is Hong Kong, so it's very traditional Cantonese Hong Kong style food. This is a little different because traditionally, maybe in a pre-COVID era, you'll have little ladies pushing around carts of freshly steamed dumplings and food, and that's how you get your food. But since we're doing social distancing, we're ordering everything on a little menu where we just check stuff off. 3 separate dishes. So the first one is shrimp shumai. I feel like this is like very common in most Chinese restaurants. I feel like you could get this at very Americanized Chinese restaurants, but this is a very traditional dish the way they make it here. It's basically dumpling skin with shrimp and pork fillings. It's like one of the most iconic dishes in like Cantonese cuisines. The next dish is not really Cantonese, it's more Shanghai-Lebanese. Xiu long bao, or soup dumplings. And basically it's a little bit of meat and a lot of soup in this outer filling. It's one of my absolute favorite dishes. It's very famous in the Shanghai area of China. And then the last one I have is lao sha bao, which is like a pastry, but it has egg custards on the inside. If you open it up, it's a sweet filling. Well, look at all that juicy goodness that's flowing out.
That's good.
Yeah.
So, can you tell us what the lanterns are and like what's going on here?
It's for Chinese New Year's. I wish I could tell you what's the cultural significance of having lanterns, but I really don't know. Besides maybe more functional and providing light back in the day.
They're pretty.
Yeah, they're pretty.
So here we have Masco Street, which would have a long time ago been the heart of the Five Points neighborhood. So if you're familiar with the movie Gangs of New York, which is one of my favorite movies, it's historical fiction. This would have been, where a lot of that took place. Today, you've got this great shot of the One World Trade Center behind us here.
So now we're at one of the oldest store in Chinatown. Founded in 1880. It's a porcelain store. It's owned and operated by the same family for the past 5 generations. And they sell teapots, different vases. Yeah, it's a really cool part of like Chinatown history, and it's still here to this day. we are. We're at a very traditional Chinese bakery. It's very like everyday people type of thing. Where like it's very common for Chinese Americans to come here, pick up a few things for breakfast, or come here after work, pick up a few things for dinner. Everything here is super cheap and super fresh. Like most pastries are under $5. It's made out back in the kitchen. But one thing to know if you ever come to Chinatown is always bring cash. A lot of these places don't accept credit cards and it's cash only establishments. So now we're on Canal Street in front of a very typical Cantonese restaurant where they have all types of roasted meats hanging out. So we have some roasted pork, looks like a rib, chicken, and duck. We're actually about to have duck, some Peking duck in Peking duck house, but this is a Cantonese roasted duck, which is very different from Peking duck because it's northern cooking versus southern cooking. This is just fully roasted, whereas Peking duck is a little more elaborate cooking. Yeah.
Okay, so we're at a new spot. We're here at the Tiger Pan Asian Fusion, just a little bit outside of what's really considered Chinatown. We've got some hot cocktails here, trying to warm up. So I've got some warm rum drink and warm coffee drink over here. Cheers.
Cheers. Very fitting the tiger for Hampden-Sydney.
Oh, thank you. So we've got a steamed pork dumpling or a soup dumpling, which is full of liquid. So Jackie explained this to me. Hopefully I do it right.
And then you put a little vinegar.
I didn't pay attention.
Fast student.
A little bit of vinegar.
Yep.
Good. How we eat it?
So this is a dish dating back to the 13th century from the royal courts. Traditionally, it's a dish served for the emperors just because of the amount of time and to prepare this dish. And back in the day, duck is very expensive per treat. But anyways, so they prepare this by getting a whole duck, and they would blow air into the duck to separate the skin from the fat and the meat. And when they roast it, because the skin separated, it's very crispy compared to like your normal roast duck. So in order for us to eat it, we'll all take a piece of duck. We're gonna take a little shell. It's kind of like a burrito spring roll situation right there, where you take a little shell, take a piece of duck skin. Oh, it's very warm. And then you take a few scallions and cucumber. Just a little green. It adds a little good crunch to the whole concoction. And then you add a little hoisin sauce. And you just wrap it up and eat it. I don't know what's the best way to wrap this, but I think I could be pretty creative with this dish. That's it. Got me a little nice Peking duck roll.
Chinese taco.
Yeah. You got it? Cheers. Very good.
All right, and we're back. Cameron, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
All right, great. Hope everybody enjoyed. I got cold just watching that again. I found it hard to talk at some points during our taping. It was so cold. Jackie, do you want to just chat a little bit more about the story behind Namwa?
Yeah, so Namwa Tea Parlor is the oldest restaurant in Chinatown. It was founded originally in 1920s. So when Matt and I visited 3 weeks ago, it would turn like 101 years old. The cool story behind this restaurant is that the current owner used to work at Morgan Stanley, and he was actually in the second tower when the first plane crashed, and he was able to get out in time. And as he was walking away, and his first instinct is to just leave the financial district, so he walked towards his family's tea parlor. And around the same time, the family was thinking about shutting down the restaurant and potentially selling it, since they had many years of great success and it's time to move on. And it was at that time when he kind of realized that he didn't really enjoy working in that corporate America setting, and he much rather spent his life continuing on the family business and continuing on this restaurant in New York City. So now he's able to grow it from this original location on Doyer Street to 4 other locations, and a great successful online shop. It's been featured in a lot of local New York City food publications and a lot of vlogs, food vlogs. And I think it's going to be going to become a well-known establishment in New York City, like Katz and Peter Lugart's, where it's going to be an iconic New York City restaurant.
Yeah, the food was really good. I'm excited to go back there at some point when I can be inside, or maybe when the weather's a little warmer. And just so you all have the example of the dishes that we had, these are the names and the Chinese characters. I hadn't even thought of really starting our meal out with tea, and it was so cold outside that was a very welcome first order for us. The shop that we featured in the video was Wing On Wan Co., which I think actually has a very similar story. Jackie, is it the second or third generation is now running the business? Is that right?
It's actually the 5th generation. Yeah,
right.
So
and some young kids are kind of running it and have been taking it online and whatnot, right?
Yeah, and I think they're really adding a modern spin to it, increasing its social media presence and kind of rebranding the porcelain store. It's a really cool business. Actually had a chance to meet the current owner, and she was really cool and wanting to continue on the family tradition business, which is very common in a lot of the Eastern cultures. I agree with that.
And we have the link to their website there, so if anybody wants to check it out, they've got a very modernized site, and it looks like just came out with this lookbook where you could dig through what they've got in the store, maybe order some if you want. So we went to a place called the Tiger. We thought that was great. This being a Hampden-Sydney event, it was a little bit outside of Chinatown, a Pan-Asian restaurant influenced by a lot of different Asian cuisines. I personally love like that type of food, like Singaporean food, where it's Chinese and Indian influenced at the same time. This place actually opened, I think, just before COVID became a real problem for us here in New York. So it's been basically a sort of like a struggling restaurant from the get-go, but it was packed when we got there. They've got some great dining structures, and we had an amazing meal. I mean, my wife and I have put it on our list of places to go back and eat. Some of those noodles that we had were so good. Here are the 2 drinks that we had. They had warm cocktails, which was great. I think the winner was my drink, which was To Winter, the rum one there. Yeah, again, I can highly recommend this restaurant. And here is the list of the foods that we had. I think my favorite, I was talking about those egg noodles with the mushrooms, and the katsuobushi, which is like simmered, smoked, and fermented skipjack tuna. I gotta go back and eat that. And Jackie, what was your favorite?
I love the fried fingerling potatoes. It's absolutely amazing. I love spicy food, but this is not that spicy, but it's has a little sweet tang towards the end, which I really like.
Yeah, it was all good. We made a sort of impromptu stop. I mean, at some point we were walking through Chinatown and Jackie saw the bakery and said, "Oh, you got to go in here." And I believe it's a Cantonese style bakery. You know, a lot of Hong Kong influence there. I actually liked it so much. When I went back to Chinatown the following weekend to buy my Baiju, I went into this bakery and bought a bunch of stuff and brought it home because I was a big fan. Jackie, what do you recommend when someone goes into a place like that? Are there any favorite foods that you have at a bakery? I mean, they had everything from like savory, like basically like hot dogs in a bun and pork buns and things like that, to sweet.
Yeah, my absolute go-to, and it's a classic at all these traditional Cantonese style bakeries, is the egg custard. It's just this egg bouquet with like a little really flaky soft crust on the outside. And a really interesting story is that it's actually originally a Portuguese dish that was brought over by the Portuguese to Macau, which is a neighboring city by next to Hong Kong. And the local Chinese community really embraced that dish and kind of took it over and make it something of their own. So absolutely get the egg custard.
And if you all can look on the picture on this slide, the egg custards are the pastry there in the very top left of the bakery case, the yellow thing that sort of looks like a quiche. And they also had a green tea custard, which I got on my second trip back there, and that was really, really good too. And everything was cheap. That was the best. I think, you know, I bought like a lot of food on my second journey there for I think it was $10. But to Jackie's point, it was cash only. And they didn't seem to speak English. They were yelling at me in Mandarin or Cantonese. And our last stop was the Peking Duck House. I was really excited because duck is probably one of my favorite things to eat, and Long Island duckling is very local, obviously, to New York. So you can get some good duck in New York. We were not able to figure out where the duck in Chinatown comes from. I don't know if it's from Long Island or somewhere else, or if it's the same type of duck. But I'll Jackie, do you want to add anything on our experience there? I know that you talked about it in the video, but anything to add?
No, I was just really glad that they have somewhat of a heating structure, and it was somewhat covered compared to some of the other places we went through throughout the journey. I think we filmed all day was 30 degrees, probably colder than that plus wind chill. It was absolutely miserable by the end of it. So it was really nice to have some warm food as the last place we visited.
And as y'all could see in the video that we had, they bring the fully cooked duck to you and present it at the table before they take it back and slice it. That was pretty cool. And actually, the Peking Duck House is a BYOB restaurant. We did have Qingdao when we were there, and they had a very limited wine selection. But if you want to take a really nice bottle of wine to dinner with you, I think they have like a $10 corkage fee or something. And here's just the picture of the duck again. They've got a deal you can see on the menu there, $41 a person for a full meal. But I think we just ordered one duck for like $60, I want to say it was, and we split it. So it was a pretty reasonable meal at the end of the day. So last of all, we have to thank the women in our lives for putting up with us. They've got smiles on their faces, but they were really cold as well, and they put up with us for a few hours while we did this. So thank you very much to them. And here are some links to the places that we went to. if you'd like to try. I know that Namwa is on Goldbelly, which is a company that will basically ship food anywhere. They ship it in like these containers via UPS or FedEx that keep it cold. So a lot of times it's frozen, and they've got instructions for how to heat it up at home. So that's been popular during COVID. They also have the Namwa cookbook. You can try out some recipes on your own. The Tiger has delivery and pickup in New York and in Philadelphia. Peking Duck House, unfortunately, you're going to have to come to New York, but we can recommend all of them. We had a really, really good time. So that's it for our show. Cameron, do we have any questions? Or actually, I had sort of a couple of questions maybe to get things started if we don't have any just yet, but let me know.
Why don't you go ahead and throw a few softballs out there for us of fun facts, and then I'll remind all of our attendees, if you have any questions or comments for our panelists tonight, feel free to put those in the chat or the Q&A feature.
So Jackie, your family's in the restaurant business, and I just wanted to see if you could comment at all on the impact of COVID. I mean, your family doesn't have Chinese restaurants, but Asian, and it seemed like really early in the pandemic there was some discrimination and outright sort of racism happening, but that affected restaurants. I mean, people sort of stopped going to Chinese and Asian restaurants. I mean, did that affect your family's business, or could you speak to it at all?
Yeah, so I think the current impact and a lot of the xenophobia towards Asian Americans is still happening. I've actually seen a few reports today where elderly Asian people are getting attacked in the Bay Area in New York City, largely due to like a lot of misunderstanding of I think humanity and each other. So I think personally what's been happening to my family's business, my family owns a chain of Japanese steakhouses in Virginia and West Virginia. So the lockdown is not as strict in those two states. So luckily we have been able to kind of keep our doors open. It definitely has been a lot harder than prior years. I think anyone who's been in the restaurant business knows that it's a really, really cutthroat game. So it's always been hard. So this just also just adds to it. I think for my family, I think they were very successfully able to pivot towards a lot of takeout models. We're very easily. We also have sushi bars attached to a lot of our restaurants, so kind of transitioning to more of a sushi takeout and reducing some of our staff and hours, kind of that help keep us afloat during this time.
And maybe a more, I'll give you a more lighthearted question, but I mean, I'm sad to say that I live really close to Chinatown, and it took me a really long time to actually go up there. I think that even though I've been to China and I spent 6 weeks there when I was in graduate school, it's very foreign to someone like me. And so, I didn't really know where to go, what to order. I mean, what advice do you have for people if they go to Chinatown in New York or Flushing or San Francisco or somewhere else, like how to approach ordering something, that they're gonna enjoy? Any tips that you have?
Yeah, my best tip is always have cash in Chinatown, because like I said before, a lot of these small businesses are still a cash only business. My second piece of advice is honestly just talking to a lot of the staff and people that work in a lot of these restaurants, bakeries, because even though they might not have the most, they might not be most fluent in English, they're super happy and willing to help and kind of showcase our vibrant and friendly culture and being immigrants in America, they kind of have the interactions with English speakers in the past, so they do have some basic levels of understanding. So my advice is to be very open-minded, take it as an adventure, and hey, like, who knows when you're able to travel to Asia, when when the pandemic is over. So this might be the best way for you to kind of use that as a window towards, instead of visiting Asia, you could visit your local Chinatown instead.
And I think I'd add on to that, be just willing to step out of your comfort zone, because I think some of the things that I enjoyed the most on our trip were not things that I would have ordered. So, Jackie ordered them like the egg custard. I probably would have just gotten something else that, looked a little more Western or familiar to me. And I guess even though that was Portuguese influence, it's something that I really enjoyed. So the whole adventure was, certainly put me at ease at going back there on my own, which is, one of the reasons I was so glad to share this with everybody that was able to join today.
Matt and Jackie, I think y'all did such a great job showing us Chinatown. I think people want to get more of a look at who you are and what you're doing in New York City. Could you each tell us a little bit more about what you're doing with your careers and maybe some of your personal hobbies or things that you're doing in the city, and maybe where you live in the area, that sort of thing?
Jackie, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So this goes back to the Hampden-Sydney Brotherhood and how strong our alumni network is. I actually work for a Hampden-Sydney alum, Maurice Jones. I think he's class of '85. He heads up a national nonprofit here in New York City called Local Initiative Support Corporation. We're one of the largest impact investors in affordable housing and supporting economic development in rural and intercity areas throughout the country. So I'm on the credit team. My job is the credit officer, and I look at our investments and make sure they're credit worthy. I live in Bushwick, Brooklyn, which is this kind of up and coming hip artist area of Brooklyn. So it's really fun. Tons of nightlife, restaurants, bars. It's relatively more affordable for a younger person trying to find a cool place to live when they're first starting their career.
And maybe unsurprisingly, I work in finance as well. I started my career after graduate school as an investment banking analyst, decided I didn't like that, and wanted to do something that was a little more people oriented. So ended up working for a executive search firm focused on hedge funds and private equity firms, and have been doing that the last 10 years or so. I live down in the financial district on Wall Street, corner of Water and Wall Street. We really love the area, just the history. I mean, one of the things that attracted me to Hampden-Sydney when I visited as a senior in high school is just the history the college had, the way that the entire campus looked. And, I really love the fact that I live in the sort of original fort, Fort Amsterdam. The Dutch were running around here 300 years ago. And it's a really cool place. One of my favorite things that I've done with the Hampden-Sydney Club was our financial district pub and history tour, where I walked everybody down Wall Street. We went to France's Tavern, where finally indoor dining is opening up again in New York tomorrow at 25% capacity, and I'm going to France's on Sunday. It's appropriate for this weekend because Monday's President's Day, and actually George Washington said goodbye to his troops at France's Tavern after the Revolutionary War. And so, New York being one of the first capitals in the United States, I mean, that's one of the things that I love so much, is this is almost like juxtaposition of new and old that we have here, especially downtown.
Well, and I'll say too, for those who are on here tonight, and for the students who might watch this later if they're not already on, the New York City Club has been so great about connecting with our students through the Hire a Tiger program, and helping guys who, even if they're not actively looking for a career in the city and just have interest in New York and what it has to offer, for students coming right out of college or looking for internships. Jackie, Matt, and Tanner and others in the club have been so great about reaching out to us and trying to connect with students who have that interest, and sort of mentoring them through the process and what's required to get into the financial industry, or what obstacles you might have to overcome as a newcomer to the city, and trying to find living situations that you can afford as an entry-level worker. So it's been great to have them there as local alumni who are willing to help navigate that process. So thank you all for doing that. And for any alumni who are on, please make sure you're definitely looking at our Hire a Tiger portal on the alumni website and the career page so that you can help find students who are looking for internships and job opportunities in your city. Another question that was thrown out there is some of your Hampden-Sydney favorite moments. If you have any that you want to highlight from your 4 years that have stayed with you as alumni.
Ooh, I'm gonna have to think about that one.
It's been a while for you, man.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can remember that far in the past. I think one thing I wanted to tag on real quick to what Cameron said though is we have hosted the last couple of years the Phi Beta Lambda business fraternity has taken a trip up to New York. And that's actually something that I did, and maybe it's one of my favorite memories of school was I was in the pre-business society when I was a student, and we took trips to Washington, D.C., to Charlotte, and to New York. And there were alumni willing to host us at their places of business and tell us about what they did. And, we got to sort of get out of the Farmville bubble. Going from Hampden-Sydney to New York City is no joke. It's a very, very different place. But we actually had students scheduled to come up in March, and I had to tell them when, I don't think anybody sort of outside of New York or San Francisco thought that COVID was going to be a big deal. I had to tell them, guys, I don't think you should come, and ended up being the right call. So that was really tough. Jackie, do you have a memory? I'm gonna think on mine.
Yeah, I think my favorite memory at my time at Hampden-Sydney was a memory that wasn't formed on the Hill. It was beyond the Hill. So it's a program that we host through, I think, Student Affairs, where we take a group of students every single year to do meaningful projects, either internationally or domestically. And I was fortunate enough to go on a trip to the Dominican Republic where we helped build a school, and that was absolutely my favorite memory at Hampden-Sydney because it taught me so much that the college had trained me over the last 3 years at that point of being a good man, good citizen, and putting that into practice. And I was able to meet a lot of the alumni who I made lasting connections with that also went on the trip. So it's a trip that has both current students and alumni that go on. So being able to kind of connect with alumni and at the end of the day realize that you all have that commonality of Hampden-Sydney, no matter what year you graduated, was really great. Like, Matt and I are 10 years apart, but like whenever we go out, it seems like we went to school together. So.
Jackie, you trying to steal my job, man?
Not yet.
We're gonna turn this into a recruiting video. No, that's awesome. That's a great memory. Matt, have you thought yours up or?
I have so many. One like sort of funny one that just came to mind was we had to do all that etiquette stuff, those etiquette dinners, and I did the Society of 91. And I remember dancing with Anita Garland, and I was like sort of looking around. I was like really nervous. I'm a terrible dancer, and I just remember Miss Garland saying, Matt, look at me in the eyes. And it's like something that stuck with me it was just sort of like a funny thing because I feel like I'm sort of a goofy person, and I was probably a goofier 21-year-old.
Yeah, that's a good one too. Those etiquette dinners that Tommy hosts are always so great. And Anita is still living on campus and is a big part of the community. So it's great to have them both on campus and attending events when they're able. So unfortunately right now we can't do a whole lot on campus, but as soon as we do, you'll have to come back and visit. But we are at about 2 minutes after, and I do want to be respectful of everyone's time. Our audience stuck with us. So thank you to everybody who joined tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. Like I mentioned earlier, we will have this on the Hampden-Sydney College YouTube channel, and we'll just go ahead and share a link maybe sometime tomorrow after this is done downloading the recording. And we'll make sure everybody who attended receives this, and all those who registered in case they missed it tonight. But a very special thank you to Matt and Jackie. I think everyone would agree you put a whole lot of work into this, and you know, on just for the college because you wanted to do it, which is so great, indicative of the strength of our alumni network and your willingness to engage with the college and keep all of our alumni together even when we're apart. So thank you for doing this, and we look forward to seeing what else the New York City Club has to offer.
Thanks,
Thanks
Cameron.
for putting up with us.
It was a real pleasure. We enjoyed doing it. Jackie's a fun guy to hang out with, so it was fun.
Well, we're lucky to have you both. Thank you for all you're doing. And everybody have a good night.
Happy
Bye,
New Year
everybody.
to everyone.